This Friday, Jamie Lee Curtis and Lindsay Lohan are back to switch things up in Disney's Freakier Friday.
Totally. Yes.
It's an absolute riot, and the only movie that can be described as
So much weirder than the last time.
What last time?
it's the frequel
You ready?
we've been waiting for.
That absolutely slays.
What deeply out of touch old person came up with that?
You did.
Wow.
Don't miss the comedy event of the summer for all ages. Disney's Freakier Friday in theaters this Friday. Get tickets now. Rated PG. Parental guidance suggested.
This episode is brought to you by the world's first reposado from Tequila Herradura. Made with slow-cooked, hand-harvested agave sealed into oak barrels and aged 11 months. Before being enjoyed in your glass. Experience the world's first reposado. Tequila Herradura. Please drink responsibly. Responsibility.org. Tequila Herradura. 40% alcohol by volume. Imported by Brown-Forman, Louisville, Kentucky. Herradura is a registered trademark. Copyright 2025 Brown-Forman Corporation.
It's Wednesday, Adams. I see you're trying to distract yourself from your own banal thoughts. Let me help. Here's a recording thing made of my latest root canal.
Wednesday, Season 2, begins August 6th, only on Netflix.
Pie in the Sky Media. This series contains adult language and descriptions of graphic violence throughout. Listener discretion is advised. Welcome back to Criminal Mischief with Carolyn and Brandon. You're listening to episode 110, a conversation with Dr. Gerry Clark.
I consider myself one of the most fortunate people in investigation history to have a female serial killer, which is rare enough to begin with. But then to have interviewed her and got to know her and talk to her the way I did, I found myself very lucky.
Okay, so for today's episode, please, if you haven't already, go back and give a listen to episode 104, Criminal Mischiefs, the Notorious Pizza Bomb Caper. In episode 104, we chronicled the story of an unbelievable woman, Marjorie Deal Armstrong, who was an evil genius and a diabolical Black Widow. The reason why we're going back to the Notorious Pizza Bomb Caper is because when I was researching the case, I had reached out to retired Special Agent Dr. Gerry Clark, who was the lead investigator for the FBI on this case. And I didn't hear back from him until recently. And if you listen to the bonus content where my co-host Brandon Morgan and I went over that case, we still had so many unanswered questions. So I thought it would be fun to go back and do a follow-up episode featuring Gerry to give us all those insights that we were craving in episode 104. So go back and give it a listen, but just to catch you up to speed for those who have already listened to 104, where we learned about Marjorie Deal Armstrong, a female serial killer who brought together a band of misfits to first come up with a plan to rob a bank for $250,000. And from the proceeds, Marjorie would pay one of the conspirators to murder her own father. She thought he was squandering her inheritance. So the conspirators engaged their first part of the plan. They strapped a bomb around a pizza delivery driver's neck and told him to go rob a bank. And less than an hour later, that bomb detonated and Brian Wells was dead. Fast forward 3 weeks, investigators are no closer to finding out the circumstances behind the pizza bomb caper when they get a call from a man named Bill Rothstein, who says he has a murdered man in his freezer, and what happened next was, well, you know what they say, stranger than fiction. So here's my conversation with Dr. Gerry Clark, who is also a retired special agent for the FBI, and explains all those little details we didn't have in episode 104.
Great. So Gerry, if you want to start off saying your name and title, basically how you'd like me to refer to you in the podcast, that would be great.
Yeah, no, it's Gerry Clark, retired FBI special agent and now current professor here in Erie, Pennsylvania, where the case happened. And so I was able to get a PhD along the way. And so my students call me doctor, but please call me Gerry. And yeah, fire away. I love talking about this. It literally it seems like it was yesterday, even though it's like 21 years ago now. And but every day it still is a piece of me, and it's become part of my whole fabric, really.
Wow, that says a lot, because I'm sure you had a lot of cases, and I'm assuming a long career with the FBI.
Yeah, I actually was with three different agencies. So I started out as an NCIS special agent in Philadelphia. And so most of my work was overseas and doing some protective service things, and then transitioned over to the DEA and became a DEA special agent in Cleveland, Ohio. Spent some time there, 5 years or so. And then always wanted to be and then in the FBI, and not that any are better than others, but that was just my goal. Then finally the FBI called, so then was transferred to the Cincinnati division of the FBI and worked on a violent crime squad for 6 years. Fugitives, violent crime, kidnappings, bank robberies, anything that's reactive in nature. And then in the FBI, you get on a list to go where you'd like to go. And I wanted to come back to the Pittsburgh division where I was from in the Erie RA. And I got lucky enough to get transferred home. And then that's when 2003 hit, and spent the next 10 years dealing in some form or fashion with the collar bomb case, as the FBI calls it. I've called it pizza bomber, but FBI calls it major case number 203, the collar bomb.
So you are in Erie, Pennsylvania right now, and that's where you wanted to be, and that's where you were when you caught this case.
Exactly.
Right? So you're from the area.
Yes. And I
Okay.
think that helped a lot in solving it, because I knew some of the nuances of the town and the city. It's the third largest city in Pennsylvania. So it's still a good size, but it's an hour and a half from Cleveland, Pittsburgh, and Buffalo, all sort of triangulated. So it's a nice place.
Okay. So in the episode, I started it off with Bill Rothstein calling in to the local PD department, and he has this story about a body in his freezer.
Yeah.
Is that how you came to it?
So on August 28th, 2003, the bank robbery actually happened. And that's when Brian Wells goes in, enters the bank, asks for $250,000 in cash, comes out of the bank, and PSP, the Pennsylvania State Police, did an amazing response. Felony car stopped him not far from the bank. And that's when I arrived on scene, and we were having a conversation, meaning mostly PSP. I was listening because I had received, got there a little bit behind them. But while we were talking, getting the bomb squad in place, ready to make an approach, at 3:18, it just detonated. And so I was probably 20, 30 feet from that situation. And so that's immediately when I got involved as the lead investigator for the FBI for the case. Then 3 weeks later is what you're referring to, when Bill Rothstein calls 911 and tells the state police, hey, I'm driving around in my van. I got a gun. I'm going to kill myself, but I need to tell you, I got a dead body in the freezer in my garage. And so.
When you were on that scene, and this guy, this unassuming, did you at that point know he was a pizza delivery driver? And believe the pizza delivery
because
driver?
he was telling us, hey, I'm a pizza delivery driver. I got called to deliver these pizzas to 8641 Peach. And that's when he went back to the tower site. A group of black men shot at him and put this thing around his neck and told him to rob the bank. So while he was saying that, we were asking questions, and the state police said, well, can you describe him? And he couldn't. And right away we started thinking, boy, this sounds like a story, but who knows? We don't know what we have. We don't know if he's a hostage. We don't know if he's a cooperator. We just know he's sitting there with supposedly a live device. And then all of a sudden, bam, and off it goes.
What were you thinking in that moment? I mean, were you thinking that this was a real bomb, or were you thinking?
Yeah, and I've replayed this in my head 100 times. When you sit there, you have to believe that it's potentially real, because you got to go through the processes of calling the bomb squad and keeping a distance and setting up a perimeter and all the things you're doing as an investigator. But at the same time, I had been to a number of hoax bomb bank robberies, with a binocular case with an antenna sticking out, or flares taped together that wasn't a real bomb. And so I thought, well, it's probably a hoax, but we're going to follow through with everything like it's a real bomb. And then when it went off, it was just a collective, oh my God, nobody could believe it. Nobody could believe it who was on scene.
That video that's available online, when you hear it ramping, the beeping, and you can hear him like scooching away as if he's trying to get away. And then is that at the point, did you see that? Because that had to have been like, and then how did the device go off? It's because thankfully you don't see what happened, but you were on scene, and I don't mean to get gruesome, but like it had to have been a very shocking scene.
Yeah, it was horribly shocking. You hear this faint beep, 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 and he turns sideways like this just a little bit, and then all of a sudden it goes off, and I watch him. Because he was handcuffed behind his back with his legs crossed, and he fell straight backward. And I watched his chest. I specifically focused at his chest, and it went down, but it never came back up. So I knew that he wasn't, that it was a fatal situation. He wasn't breathing. And then, the first thing, police are very nosy, inquisitive folks, and we wanted to run up and take a look. And somebody was going secondary, because bomb builders like to utilize a secondary device to hurt first responders. So we were able to pull back and wait, and then let the bomb squad make the approach, try to render it safe. But it was very, very surreal that it even happened. It was just so amazing, like crazy. And I remember it, like I said, like it was just yesterday, and I'm watching it.
So was the bomb his cause of death? Did the bomb go down? Or
so what happened was it was sort of a explosion that went inward. He had a collar around his neck and then a box that hung on his chest. And inside the box was the 2 pipe bombs. And when the pipe bombs went off, it went inward and basically dug a trench in his chest, and several vital organs then were now exposed.
That is so brutal.
Yeah, it was brutal. It was terrible.
So he died instantly.
Yeah, there was no question that he was now deceased.
Okay, you go to the pizza bomb, the pizza restaurant, rather. You go there. What happens in the meantime after this? Because obviously you know that something just went down. You went to his car. There's this like cane gun, and then all these weird notes. Like, what were you guys thinking at that time?
Yeah, the first thing you have to do is sort of collect yourself, figure out, wow, what just happened, process that. Next thing you're going to do is sort of get control of the scene, because there's a lot of things going on. While he was talking to us, and while he had told us he was a pizza delivery driver, we had already sent somebody to the pizza shop. So they were interviewing the owner. They got the call ID from the caller ID, and determined after a subscriber check that the call came from a gas station just down the road, from a payphone. So we immediately went to there, started collecting evidence there. We then went to the tower site. And the one thing that we had to do was, Brian Wells had a series of notes that you mentioned. And by the way, there were 9 total pages of notes in this. I've never seen a bank robbery with 9 pages of notes. Some were to the bank teller, some were to the police, even some were to Brian Wells. And basically he was to rob the bank and then go on a series of scavenger hunt like stops to get keys to unlock the collar around his neck. So because he couldn't do that, we did that with our SWAT teams and our specialized units. And at every site, we found another note, but there was never a key at any of the sites, which tells you that he was never supposed to get that thing off.
At that time, what does it tell you about the person that put that around his neck? I mean, that's pretty dastardly.
Yeah, it's maniacal was the word, and diabolical, and there's been all these adjectives to describe the people that did this. To think you could do that to a human, put a live device around their neck and then have them go for a series of stops finding keys that don't exist just to watch it detonate and kill him, so he's never a witness. And that's about as evil as we can get in our society.
So it sounds like you guys sent the bomb to Quantico, and they're doing their work, which takes time. From what I understand, you're thinking, does he have the smarts to do this? Walk me through that process between August 28th and then the call from Bill Rothstein. however, how many weeks later was that?
So it was 3 weeks exactly, almost. It was September 21st, Rothstein calls in. But in the meantime, we were trying to figure out, we had a couple other leads that we were looking at of individuals that looked like they were potentially interesting to us that really went to nowhere. But we were following those, tracking those. We were waiting and getting information back from the lab on how the device was made. So there's a lot going into that. And then when Rothstein calls, we go, well, this can't be coincidental, because his house was immediately adjacent to the tower site. So, I mean, within steps, you could go back the long tower site road where Brian Wells delivered the pizzas and got the bomb put around his neck. So we now have a dead body in the freezer in that garage, just steps from where he delivered the pizzas. So my job is the FBI, because now you have two individual homicides. Plus you had a third one, which was the second pizza delivery driver from that pizza shop. His name was Robert Panetti. He dies of an overdose 3 days after Brian Wells died on August 28th. So now you have three deceased people all within a 2-3 week period. And you now have to figure out the links. And that was my job as the FBI agent, to try to put together all three of those deaths.
When I listened to the interview tapes with Bill Rothstein, it was so odd how he tried to distance himself from the very beginning from Marjorie, and just try to act like, oh, I don't even like her, and she's a weirdo, and yeah, we dated, but like, I won't even let her come into my house. And if you didn't know the circumstances behind everything, because I really didn't at the time when I started listening, I was like thinking, oh, okay, she's someone that's kind of a burden to him. And according to him, she had mental health issues. But then when you like unravel everything, it's like he was totally in with her. Like, what was that dynamic? You're smiling.
No, I'm smiling because when I think of Bill Rothstein, because I interviewed him that night that he turns in the body at the state police. And I'll never forget, I walked into the room, and some of this was on Evil Genius, if you saw it, and I say to him, hey, Bill, I'm Gerry Clark from the FBI. I need to interview you. And he said, well, I need to tell you something. And I said, what's that? And he said, I'm the smartest guy in this room. And I look around, it's just him and I go, Bill, my wife tells me that all the time. Let's get going. And that's how that whole interview started. But the more I talked to him, the more egotistical I saw he was, and the more narcissistic he was, and the more antisocial personality he was. And he does not get the credit for the evil person that he was. Marjorie gets all the focus, and rightfully so, because she had killed before. But Bill Rothstein was a not good guy. And the more you were around him, the more you do it.
Yeah. At the end of it, I don't want to jump ahead, but I do want to get back to Bill Rothstein, because I think he was the ultimate mastermind. Because when he mentioned when you guys are all at his house, and it was so weird that they were all hoarders. What was that about?
I know I'm a big psychology nut, a master's in forensic psychology and the PhD and such. But I got to tell you, I had to go research that. And I said, is there a combination or some blend between hoarding and criminality? And nothing in the research ever has linked those two. But everyone in this case was a hoarder. Each property we went into got worse and worse and worse with what they had in their houses. And it was pretty crazy to see those search warrants we did.
It was, because when he went to her house to show you guys kind of what he did, and then, he was like, again, throwing her under the bus, acting like, yeah, this is such a horrible place. And, I won't even go to the bathroom in here. Right. And I'm thinking to myself, oh, I bet you his place is perfect. And then we go there, and it was like, not only did he have his hoard, but then he brought her hoard over there too, which was so weird. Why wouldn't they just take it to the dump?
So for whatever reason, he didn't want to go from her house to the dump. So he brought it from her house. And this is, by the way, the things we're talking about are all the evidence related to her killing James Roden, who ended up in the freezer. And he took mattresses, and he took all this, every piece of anything that had blood on it, and he tore the whole house apart. brought all that junk to his house, and then he was bringing it to the landfill. So he was in the process of doing that when we were hit him with the search warrant. So we found a lot of her items at his house, and then a lot of the items had already been disposed at the landfill.
At what point did you all get, because I can't remember what I watched where it was like somebody, and I don't know, and this is what's great in talking to you, is like one of the investigators saw this huge telephone tower in the backyard, and they're like, wait a second, because you wouldn't naturally connect this random person calling in with this. It sounds like a domestic situation with the body in the freezer. I would imagine you wouldn't be like, oh, wait, remember that bank robbery? I would think that there might be a couple steps there in order to get to that place, especially after reading his suicide note. That's like, hey, this has nothing to do
I know. Yeah.
with that pizza bombing, right? The first line. Talk
Yes.
a little bit about that, because that's crazy.
Yeah, first of all, in homicide, if you talk to enough homicide investigators, they'll tell you there's no real coincidences in homicide, and it's sort of true. So when I looked at the sheer location, of where these two events took place, it's hard to not figure out some connection going on here. Of course, he was denying that the whole time, which made it even more suspicious to us. I never go down that tower site. Well, it was steps from your house. I never go down there. I don't even know what goes on there. And some of the things he was saying just weren't accurate. So in that interview, I ended up doing some hypotheticals with him because he wouldn't admit to anything. So I knew that I was dealing with a narcissist. And that's where my psychology helped me in my forensic psych. I said to him, Bill, I'm just a sort of dumb cop, and I can't figure this out. And he's going, what are you talking about? And I knew I piqued his interest. And I said, I can't figure out why Brian Wells would go right to the bank and rob it if he had a bomb. Why wouldn't he go to a police department? And he looked at me and he goes, hypothetically? And I go, yeah, hypothetically, Bill. I just can't figure it out. And he said, what if they told him there were wires in the collar, and if he veered off course, they would shock him? And I literally remember slipping in my chair, almost sliding out of it, going, oh my God, because I knew through Quantico that there were wires in the collar. And he didn't know that unless he knew that he had built it. So it was just immediately that day. And by the way, we did two other hypotheticals that just blew me away, that only he would have known. Like, for example, I said, Bill, I don't even know. How would you make even a bomb? I don't even know how to make a bomb. And he said, well, hypothetically, yeah, hypothetically. He said, I would cut the tops off of shotgun shells and use the black powder because you can't trace that black powder like you can bulk black powder. And I thought, holy cow. I knew from our lab that they were black powder from shotgun shells, Remington even, that the Quantico had figured out. So he knew things that only somebody involved in the case would have known.
See, that's what makes me, I totally agree with the narcissism and your approach with it, just as a, layperson. I think that makes sense why you would approach that. But I feel like there was a part of him that wanted everyone to know that he did it, and that he knew that all of these items were just standard issue. The only thing that could connect him tangentially to it was the fact that, these profilers really nailed that the person who would build this bomb would potentially be a shop teacher. I mean, how crazy is that? That's spot on, right?
Yeah, Dr. Mary Ellen O'Toole from our FBI Quantico profiler, good friend of mine, and I just loved working with her. But we wrote a profile, and it just was his biography. It really was. It was just all about Bill Rothstein. And again, we didn't even know at the time, but it turned out to be him, and we were so accurate on it because he. And to your point, nobody's ever mentioned that to me, which is a good pickup by you because all the years I've been doing this, nobody really mentioned to me that he was in a chess game with me. He was in a chess game with wanting us to know, but not telling us. And so he was leaving these simple clues, and he had cancer and he died 4 months after that. In July, he's now dead. Or 6 or 7 months, I guess it is. But he died, And same thing, a big scene at the hospital when I go in to see him, and I look at him and I realize how sick he was. I said, Bill, don't take this with you. Cleanse your soul right now. Tell me these cases are related. And he lifted his big arm out of the bed and he drew a no. And he was dead 4 days later. And I knew it was him not wanting to give me the satisfaction of saying, yeah, I did it, make it easy for us. He wanted us to really, really struggle.
Did he know, this was a huge question that I had, did he know that he was dying of cancer when he called in with the James Roden tip that he was in his freezer? Did he know that he was dying, that he had a deadly diagnosis?
So he had cancer that went into remission and then it came back. And when exactly that came back is sort of the mystery to me to this day. I personally believe he knew or felt that he wanted to leave this world with like the best whodunit ever. That's where I go with it. So I'm believing he knew he was, and certainly he was right. He did die months later from it.
Because this would be the ultimate revenge with Marjorie too. She would be the one to stand for all this, and he'd be gone.
You're right. And it was funny when I was interviewing her and I said to her, I said, Marjorie, why wouldn't Bill just tell me? Why does he have to die and take it with him? And she said, 2 reasons. One, he's not going to give you the satisfaction. But 2, he knew that he was dying and he still loved me. And he still loved me. And he wanted me to be in jail so that nobody else would have me or be able to have me. And I thought, oh my God, well, you're such a catch. But it was so fascinating, her thought process on it too. The both of them were just so unique, like nobody I had ever interviewed.
This episode is brought to you by Nordstrom. Summer's almost out and fall's calling. Luckily, Nordstrom has everything you need for the season ahead, all under $100. Discover new arrivals from your favorite brands like Mango, Princess Polly, Wave, Free People, BDG, and more. Whether you're planning a last-minute getaway, heading back to class, or refreshing your office looks, you'll find the latest trends and beauty must-haves without breaking your budget. It's easy, too, with free shipping, free returns, and in-store order pickup. Shop today, in stores, and at Nordstrom.com.
On WhatsApp, no one can see or hear your personal messages. Whether it's a voice call, message, or sending a password. To WhatsApp, it's all just this. So whether you're sharing the streaming password in the family chat or trading those late-night voice messages that could basically become a podcast, your personal messages stay between you, your friends, and your family. No one else. Not even us. WhatsApp. Message privately with everyone.
Una silla de masajes puede parecer extravagante. 8 configuraciones diferentes, intensidad ajustable, además es calefaccionado. Y se siente tan bien. Sí, una silla de masajes puede parecer extravagante. Y 2, bueno, aún más. Pero cuando esas sillas de masajes vienen con un auto, se vuelven bastante prácticas. El nuevo Volkswagen Tiguan 2025 con funciones premium como los asientos delanteros con masaje disponibles. Solo parece extravagante.
Right now, at the Home Depot, you'll find storage solutions made to fit your needs. Grab an HDX Tough Tilt to protect your tools. Or keep your sports equipment contained with reinforced snap-fit lids. Or stack up and make better use of your space with bins and totes built to last. Whatever you're storing, we've got the gear to keep it organized and protected at the Home Depot. How doers get more done.
Let's get to her now, because she, okay, when you look at pictures of her when she's very young, she's, been described as just being super attractive and charismatic, a little histrionic, code for probably just whatever, guys would say about women. But what was your take on her throughout this entire process and the men that she was able to have circling her, even in her, as she got older and, went into this? It sounds like she really did have mental health issues.
Yeah, no, only child. She was raised like the perfect childhood that we could see from, dressed real well, parties for her as a young kid. But she sort of described it as trying to reach perfection. So she became anorexic young, picked up some real interesting psychological personality issues. And then it's sort of weird the turn she takes towards the antisocial side and some of the things that she did and how manipulative she was with men and people in general, and how scary. She was attractive, young, and just thought she was very different than everybody else. Was promiscuous, I heard, was really so unique. And when I look at some of the personality disorders, you named histrionic, but I'm later saying probably borderline personality disorder, antisocial personality disorder, paranoid personality disorder. She picked up some real unbelievable things along the way. And I never saw anybody that could get people to do things for her like she could do to men. It was really something. It was a quality about her. If you sat around her or spent time with her, she just felt this aura about her like nobody. Like I said, I've interviewed thousands of people, thousands in a career. I've never sat with anybody like her. She would laugh with me, have pretzel rods and Diet Cokes in the back of the car, driving at sites, looking at things. But as soon as she would leave us and we drop her back at the prison, she was trying to hire someone to have me killed. It was that, like, she went to one of the inmates and said, "Hey, your boyfriend's a Latin King gang member, right?" And she said, "Yeah, I want him to, kill Gerry Clark and Jason Wick, the ATF agent." And thank God she was talking to us. The inmate was calling us and giving us information about it. But that's the way Marjorie was. I mean, laughing and giggling in the car, and then bam, trying to kill me minutes later.
Wow.
Yeah, pretty crazy stuff. I mean,
why did she want to kill you?
She thought I was getting there. It was a process, and she knew I was honing in and I was figuring this thing out. And she also didn't like the psychology that I play with her, because the way she would really get out of things was get angry at people, call them names, distract them, take them off their game. And she'll say, "Gerry Clark, you're a dumbass." And I'd say, "Marjorie, that's beside the point. I probably am, but let's focus back on what we're talking about." And, redirect her. And that would frustrate her to no end, because most people would go, "No, you're a dumbass." And all of a sudden now and you're forgetting what you're there to do. And so I'd say, no, Marjorie, I probably am. Let's get back to this. I got to ask you. And that would frustrate her so much, because she knew she couldn't take me away from what she was trying to keep me distracted from.
That's really interesting. What else were you surprised by as you were interviewing her? Like, what else was it that you were surprised? Because I mean, to say that she was like the most interesting person you probably ever met is pretty, that's pretty big.
Oh, listen, if you're an investigator and you work cases your whole career, you may never come across somebody like her. So every time I'm speaking now and I talk in my classes or I go give presentations, I always say, I consider myself one of the most fortunate people in investigation history to have a female serial killer, which is rare enough to begin with. But then to have interviewed her and got to know her and talk to her the way I did, I found myself very lucky. She was the other thing that fascinated me about her, in a bad way. And again, I'm not considering her, anything that I look at on some other plane other than evil. She was so smart. She was really intelligent. She could quote Plato. I mean, she was quoting things to me and I'm going, oh. And one time I asked her a question and she answered it. And then she said, "That's it. Take me back to jail. I just put my head in the lion's mouth." Then I thought, okay, now what that means is anybody else would have said, "I've told you too much. That's it. I'm done." But that was her phrase for how she had talked too much. I put my head in the lion's mouth, and different phrases like that. And one time in trial, she swung her chair around when the jury was off out of the box. And she said, "I'm tanking like the Bismarck in here." Like references that, really, really smart people would know. And she would shock me. The Bismarck, sunk. It was a big vessel that sunk, and I'm going, wow, man, this lady, she's so unique and so smart. And
do you think that
amazing.
she was upset at you because, and this is like real, like, I'm not trying to get too psychological, but it sounds like you developed, that's part of the process, is developing a relationship with the people that you're interviewing. And you got her to say things that she didn't want to say. So you, in a way, kind of bested her, which she wasn't used to. She was used to dominating and manipulating and getting people to, and you kind of got under her skin to get her to reveal some stuff, it sounds like.
I think in some real weird way, she was impressed in some way. Like I drew some respect out of her, who she always thought she was smarter than everybody. Mm-hmm. One way we tricked her one time, she always said, oh, these inmate witnesses that they have talking about me, they're all crack whores and they don't know anything. I've never told them anything. So one time we're interviewing her, and I remember I did this on purpose. Obviously, I said to her, Marjorie, when you're not yelling at me, you have $1 million smile. And she looked at me and she said, what are you talking about? And I said, no, I'm not kidding. You really do have $1 million smile when you're not, griping and yelling at me. And I did that for a reason, because she went back to the prison and she always talks to the inmates, and then the inmates would call me. So the inmate called that time, and we went in to interview her, and I said, what did Marjorie say today? And she said, oh, this and that. And she goes, by the way, she said something really weird. I said, what's that? She told me that you told her she had $1 million smile. And I said, oh, thank you. So I wrote it down. And then when we went to court, that came out, that whole thing. And we said, the only way that inmate knew that I told her that is if Marjorie told her. And she knew she was tricked because nobody else knew that but Jason Wick and me and her.
Yeah, she got caught with her fingers in the cookie jar saying that she liked that. It sounds like, that made her feel good.
That made her feel good. And it made her want to tell someone. And
how did she do in prison?
Oh, she was a model prisoner. And that was what was so funny. They'd say, they'd come to get her to do she used to have to sweep one of the rooms or something. And she'd be standing there ready to go at the cell when it would open up, and she'd come out and do her work, go back. So she was a really good prisoner because she knew how to follow the rules when it benefited her. So she could get more, time outside of her cell or whatever. She was always manipulating, just all day, every day.
Why did she come up with this plan to murder her own father for the inheritance? It seemed like she didn't really need it because she had some of the leftover money from the death of her, was it her first husband?
Yeah, she sued the hospital after she hit him in the head with a baseball bat, basically, and said that he fell and hit a coffee table. And then they missed the bleed, and then he died, and she sued him and won some money. And then she bought another property, but she was a hoarder of everything, and that included money. So it was never enough. It always had to be more. And so that's why her dad had about 2 million, 1.8, I guess. And she was the only child. Her mother died, and she wanted that money now. The quickest way to do that was kill him and get the inheritance. And that was what she was after.
I know, but why does people keep bombing? I mean, that's what makes me feel like they wanted to do this. Rothstein wanted to create the perfect crime. He wanted to make this bomb and showcase his engineering and his specialty skills. He's at the end of his life. What does he have to show for what he's done? This is his opus. It seems to me, and somehow he was able to convince her, it seems like, to do it. Because, they could have paid someone a lot less to kill the dad or done it themselves, or, you know what I mean? What's your take on that?
What she did was she went to all her friends, Ken Barnes being one of them, and Ken Barnes ends up in the Pizza Bomber, of course. But she went to Ken Barnes and said, hey, I need to kill my father. And he said, well, I'll kill your father, but I need $250,000 down. And she said, well, where am I going to get $250,000? And they said, well, let's rob a bank. And so the whole crux of the Pizza Bomber bank robbery was to rob the bank to get $250,000, because that's what they asked for in the notes, to pay Ken Barnes to kill her father to get $2 million. Bill Rothstein, his plan was sort of like what you just designed. He really just said, oh, And he took this as the opportunity to come up with the perfect scheme. So the money to get the, to pay Ken Barnes was the bank robbery plot, maybe thought up by Marge. But the whole plot and scheme of how they did it was Bill Rothstein.
Yeah, I totally agree. So do you think that Brian Wells was in on it, at least as what is your, because there's no proof to show that he did or that he didn't, right? Still at this juncture.
Not at this juncture, but as we got further down the line and people started cooperating and witnesses started coming forward, we now have undeniable proof that Brian Wells met Marjorie Deal and Ken Barnes at Ken Barnes's house when he picked up the prostitute to Jessica, and Jessica wanted crack cocaine, and Ken Barnes was selling it. So Brian would drive her to Ken Barnes's house. They'd consummate their sex transaction. He'd pay her for that. She'd pay Ken Barnes for crack. And that's how they met Brian, was at Ken's house. And when they started talking about a bank robbery, they said, Brian, you could be the driver. We'll pay you $5,000 to be the driver. You'll wear a fake bomb. It won't go off. If you're caught, you're a hostage. If you're not caught, we'll just take it off and we'll give you the $5,000. So he agreed to participate. But to his credit, the day he shows up to deliver the pizzas, he sees the bomb for the first time and goes, that looks too real. I don't want to do this anymore. That's when Rothstein shoots a shot in the air. Ken Barnes hits him, knocks him to the ground, puts it on him and said, it's fake. Go rob the bank and we'll take it off and give you the money. So he goes and robs the bank and then sticks to the story that they told him. Because really, Brian Wells could have ended this the minute we're talking to him. Hey, this Bill Rothstein, Marjorie Deal, Ken Barnes, they did this. But he stuck with the story that a group of black men did this. And that's why he couldn't describe them or anything. So to his credit, he tried to get out to the aggravating side. He stuck with it and then gave a false story.
He had been totally duped again by that crew.
That's exactly what happened. He was naive. He was gullible. They describe him as slow on television. He really wasn't slow. He was naive and gullible, and they talked him into it. And the other part about this was that most people don't talk about, the day before the robbery on August 27th, they had a pre-planning meeting, and he showed up. So Wells was at the pre-planning meeting, and we have a witness seeing him leaving the tower site the day before. So he was fully in. He tried to get out and he was murdered. So don't get me wrong. He was still killed, but he definitely had a role.
Wow. So was the other employee of the pizza place, what was the drug overdose? Do you think that was related, or do you think that it was just a coincidence?
Yeah, no, unfortunately it was clearly related. He also had a role. So they were paying him $5,000 to make sure that Brian Wells continued on. So the day that it gets put around his neck, he was at the tower site too. And the reason he got all nervous was he thought, wow, I didn't know this was going to be real either. They're probably coming for me. And that's when Ken Barnes said to him, hey, I got something that'll calm you down. And they gave him a hot shot basically and killed him. So a hot shot is a combination of drugs that together become lethal, like the synergy of, and his was Xanax and methadone. And the combination of those two drugs, killed him. And so now he wasn't going to be a witness either.
It was never able to be proven in a court.
No, I talked to Ken Barnes in the jail. Jason Wick and I did. And we said, Ken, we know what happened to Robert Panetti. Why don't you just tell us? And he said, I can't tell you. Now, he was already going to plead to the pizza bomber, but he didn't want to have that one with him too. But he was already going to go away for 45 years. So the government felt, like we didn't have enough to really follow through with it.
Well, this has been fantastic. It's so great. Like, I love your curiosity. I love how you used your training to get the best of Marjorie. And I'm not putting her on a pedestal either. I just think that I agree with you that she seems like she was like no other person.
Eileen Wuornos is the only one that comes to mind, you know,
Yes.
the movie Monster, and she also shot men with guns, and that's a rare thing for a female serial killer. They usually use poison or suffocation or something much different than a weapon. But so yeah, she's in that category, no doubt.
Did she not like men, do you think?
I think, yeah, subconsciously she loved manipulating them, and when they didn't do what she wanted, they became useless to her. And that sort of was her game plan. Like I was going to be somebody that she could get rid of, and she would have no loss of sleep over it.
Well, this has been great. I'll send you a link when it comes out. Is there anything else that I should have asked you that I didn't? Or you think?
No, I think you have a really good handle on the case. That was very good. I mean, most people hear about it and don't know some of the dynamics of, you know, mastermind versus, you know, other situations. But I thought you had a really good handle on it. And I think you did a very, very nice job of the question. So thank you.
Up next, criminal mischief bonus content. Here, my co-host Brandon Morgan and I will discuss the case in more detail. And if you have a minute, head on over to Apple Podcasts and rate and review the show. Tell a friend. It really helps. And as always, thanks for listening. From Cloud 10, Criminal Mischief is a pie-in-the-sky production recorded in the beautiful Pacific Northwest. We're produced by Brandon Morgan and myself. Music by Soundstripe. I'm Carolyn Osorio, your writer and host.